Thank you, Joe, for inviting me. And the first two speakers actually covered some very cool stuff that, we do things very conventional, very different. I think we're in the golden age of analytics, or I should say golden age of wireless analytics or convergence. There's multiple things happening right now in this new era. So we started this company about 5 years back. We are ex-IBM, ex-UC Berkeley, ex-Stanford crowd. Our office is based in Palo Alto. We like to look at a lot of data. So our goal was to try and transform medical data from acute hospitals and try and improve care, try and improve patient quality and safety. Just quickly to go through. So our company has been focused on clinical analytics to try and offer predictive tools for patient quality and safety. We've been focused quite a bit on readmissions, third-year readmissions. And our goal was to get into the guts of the patient record, which is the medical record, to understand the patient better, and to do it also in real time, which means that we have to understand the disease as well. So we focus a lot on cardiovascular, cancer, and lately mental health. We've been working with large hospitals mainly, also been working with some community hospitals. We were partially funded by NIH and NCI in 2008, which really helped us cement the fact that we have some good risk models that actually can analyze the patient risk. We feel that we're the leaders in applying predictive models and analytics on medical records because of the fact that over the last 5 years, we've analyzed 50 million patient encounters. I've gone through our tools. I haven't seen anybody go through so many patient records as we have. We actually had to learn medicine as a part of our process, even though we are sort of mathematicians and clinicians in our team. We collaborate with NIH and ONC on driving leadership as well to a certain extent, and how do we bring analytics to the forefront. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as soon as possible. So we've been, from the very first beginning, in 2007, we started focusing a lot on readmissions. In those days, when I said I was working on 30 readmissions, it was sort of a strange thing to present this to a VC who said, oh, readmissions, why the heck do you want to look at that? But we thought that was important because that actually was the critical thing for hospitals. They knew at some point they're going to get penalized. Their goal was to be able to come up with good technologies upfront to identify who's at risk of readmissions. And as you know, CMS basically has put an estimate of close to $20 billion in excess costs for third-year admissions. So our goal was, can we identify the patient up front as opposed to wait for the patient to get discharged? Can we identify who those patients are? Can we actually find a way to help them figure out a care pathway? Can we actually assist the clinician in terms of giving information about the patient risk profile? We also started looking at patient non-adherence to treatment and medications. Here we're funded by NIH to really look at medical records to be able to use psychosocial and social risk factors to be able to identify who's at risk of deviating from their treatment protocol. And so that was sort of our activity. After having done this work for over the last 5 years, lots of wires here, we felt that we can actually save a large hospital system anywhere from 3 to 5% of their costs, which typically amounts to anywhere from 5 million, 10 million in terms of costs of actually reviewing patient charts, identifying who the patients are, and then eventually providing the necessary care through our analytics. So this is actually a very important chart. I'm not getting into the guts of a medical record. And this is really what we do. We look at a patient record. Here is a patient who is above 65, family history of hypertension, family history of heart failure. Father of this patient died early. Patient is a smoker, currently lives alone. Has an issue with her job, can't pay her bills on time. So there's a lot of interesting issues here. So we analyze this medical record, both the physician notes in text and also using other elements within the medical record in real time. So we extract, using the text analysis techniques we have, what medication is the patient on, is this patient living alone, is this a smoker, does the patient drink lots of alcohol, what are the patient's stress levels. We then construct a model based on that. So we do all of this actually in real time. We pull the data from the medical records in non-stop, continuously on a minute-by-minute basis, including lab values, orders, vital signs coming from potentially devices, admissions information from the ER. And all of it is really to identify who is this patient who's walked into the hospital system. And if they come to the ER, what exactly are the symptoms? Can we actually identify this patient to be a heart patient? They might have come in for a leg fracture because they actually fell down, but in reality, they have symptoms of heart failure. They could be stage 1, stage 2, potentially stage 3 heart failure. And can we track those patients? And once we do the identification, we would then do risk stratification. Put them into a green bucket or a blue bucket or a yellow bucket or a red bucket. And again, eventually identify who's at risk and do the risk analysis for third-year readmissions, and also do risk analysis for, is this patient going to see a disease progression over the next 30 days, 90 days, 120 days? In effect, what we do is we run through the analysis in real time, minute-by-minute basis, pulling all the information out, identify the patient, do the risk stratification, and provide a risk profile on an iPad to the clinicians who are walking around the hospital system looking at these patients. And we were one of the first few companies really to take the jump, which is to convince hospitals that we would love to look at the data. So they have to solve it anyway to identify who's at risk. And we would actually analyze the data up front and make it available to them literally on day 1 of the patient arrival and not day 8 or day 9 when the patient has left the hospital. That was a very important thing. It's a huge leap from looking at post-discharge data versus looking at data up front, which means that we had to figure out, is this patient really a heart patient? In effect, we're trying to do what a physician would do, which is to analyze the patient data as though you would be a physician. It's almost like going back to Star Trek days. You have the tricorder, you sort of analyze the patient and then say, okay, yes, now we know what's going on. So we're sort of building a system that actually is learning about the patients and identifying who the patient is, and then providing the information in a very nice fashion to case managers and care managers so they can take the actions. So really speaking, what we do is we then figure out, okay, where does this patient belong to in the risk group? On the x-axis are basically a bunch of risk factors we identified by looking at all the different kinds of patients over the last 5 years in terms of heart failure, and we identified that there's several risk factors that cause these patients to come back. We call it the long tail. It's not just the clinical factor, also the factors in terms of where they live, how they live, what their stress levels are, if they're able to pay their bills in time, if they actually have job issues. So we lay out all the risk factors on the x-axis, and then we figure out a way to position this patient that you've seen before in terms of where this patient belongs to. So we sort of do risk stratification and quantification, and also provide information saying, this patient actually needs help on nutrition, or this patient needs help on financial issues, or this patient needs help on home support. So we give also information upfront to the clinician on day 1 of the inpatient arrival, so it actually helps them drive better care and eventually care coordination. That's very important for us. So again, I call this a long tail of root causes, and I think this is very important to look at when looking at readmissions. So going forward, what do we actually offer? We offer a product that's basically a software-driven product that's packed in with a lot of clinical knowledge, a lot of clinical rules, a lot of interesting English language dictionaries. Of course, if you write a physician note in a very weird fashion, it'll also include also those abbreviations and so on and so forth, that can analyze and predict the risk of readmissions and predict the risk of disease progression upfront, and give that information to the clinicians at the, right next to the patient bedside, so they can actually talk to the patient, enroll them in some sort of program. The program can be a post-acute sniff, it could be a post-acute home health, it could be medical homes, it could be the patient might go home with a telehealth monitor, that kind of ones that we've heard earlier. So really speaking, we offer this tool that basically is co-located with the EMR, but it pulls information in real time from admissions, EMR, and so on and so forth, including telehealth devices, and gives you a risk profile. We then actually enable this to improve case management, improve risk adjustment, improve ways to identify if this patient really is at risk. So going back, we've shown that by doing this early detection, which is a different way of doing it from the earlier speakers, we're actually able to identify who these patients are because we're getting the ground truth from the physicians, ground truth from the clinicians, ground truth from the ICU and also from the ER. That's helping us now track this patient for the next 10 days during the inpatient stay, or the next 80 days, 90 days, or even the next 120 days. Because once a patient gets discharged, we continue monitoring them through patient surveys or through telehealth devices if they end up going to telehealth support as a part of their progress. We've noticed a huge difference in readmission rate reduction for some of the hospital systems. We also noticed that we've saved them time where they have to physically print a copy of the patient record every day and review it. We do it automatically in just a matter of seconds. And we give the clinician more time to spend with the patient. Huge, huge plus. But why we do this stuff is really to drive care coordination. That's our main goal, is can we help the clinicians and the case manager drive care better. Therefore, the patient gets much better care over a longer period of time. And we continuously monitor every touch point and every entry point, including providing a very nice longitudinal record. So really speaking, in terms of ROI, we've shown that by tracking and enrolling patients up front, by analyzing their patient record, we've now given an interesting clinical risk perspective. We also give an interesting social and psychosocial perspective. Now the clinicians can spend more time tracking the patient through the inpatient stay, including when they go back home. We've shown that we can really transform the way you handle care management. We've also shown how we can actually improve care coordination across the different acute and post-acute venues that include basically SNFs, home care, and so on and so forth. We feel that by using these kind of mobile devices up front, including providing the analytics at the back end, we can improve mobility and productivity. And we've noticed that actually this is a huge plus for a lot of payers as well who really want to cut down the time they spend reviewing patient charts and let the system do it for you and actually find ways to improve the care. So we think that we're getting to a point where maybe we're building a tricorder of sorts that actually can analyze the patient way before anybody else can do it. And in the future, we want to actually catch the patient at day -1, day -2, which might be through wireless devices, where if the patient is at home, we get information. This patient obviously has a past history of illnesses, past history of symptoms. We can actually catch the information up front and do something about it. So I'm finishing up very quickly, so thank you for the 1 hour. So here we are. So we basically are pretty excited about what we've done so far. We haven't taken any funding from anybody. We're not asking for funding from anybody. We'd love to get some funding. I wish we had funding 5 years back. But we got money from the federal government. They've been actually pretty nice. They've given us funding, so it's really helped us cement our work. A lot of the VCs we spoke to earlier, 5 years back, really didn't believe in this model. But as we started really building this out with large health systems who had a need, now they see the value of what we've done. And it's already been 5 years beyond. And so it's really interesting to see what has transpired. Coming back to the convergence, I think we're sort of in the cusp of trying to build a platform that can pull data from multiple sources to do precisely what you mentioned, early detection, to really drive that in a much better fashion. And once it happens, you can really transform a lot of things in terms of both care and case management. And so that's sort of where we are, and actually we're pretty excited about what we have done so far. Thank you.